came across Rootly originally as a user. So I was at Canva and I had to log this pricing incident. And one of my engineers actually told me that, hey, you could just log it directly through Slack. Just, put this in and your incident will be logged and you can kind of track that whole incident from there. And I was like pretty impressed. I had to kind of go through the whole postmortem, go through the whole process. And it's only recently that I discovered that Rootly is a Toronto-based company. So I was putting together, I think a couple months ago, just a list of Toronto founders, Toronto YC founders. And Rootly kind of came up on my radar. I reached out to JJ and here we are. So this discussion will be for me to also learn about how Rootly kind of acquired those early customers and learn a little bit more about JJ's journey. So JJ, tell us a little bit about how you got started and your journey so far in terms of starting Rootly. Start from the beginning.
Yeah, super excited to be here. Well, first off, thanks for being a customer. That's important. That's $25 a month I needed for a license. Actually, no, we priced Canva even higher, so that's fantastic. But now you're not paying that. Yeah. So that's great. Yeah, great to meet everyone. I'm JJ. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Rootly. Everything I'm going to talk about, we built this company within basically 2 square kilometers of this office. And the first thing I'll say is there is no reason building a company in Toronto is not possible. I think there's a lot of just rhetoric to go to the States immediately, but we're doing tens of millions of revenue and we've never once thought that was going to be an issue for us. But in terms of our journey, so I went to school at Western, and then I worked at a startup called Ada at the time before it was called Ada as their first employee. Zane's gonna have Mike on. He's way smarter, way more handsome than me. So that'll be next month, right? Yeah, next month. Then after that, I went to IBM. You work at a boomer company doing boomer things, and yeah, it was fun. Just work 4 to 6 hours a week, which is pretty nice. Then one of my good friends ended up going to Instacart. And I remember trying to figure out what did Instacart do? Oh, they do grocery delivery. That's really cool. I was like, how much money are you making there? He's like, oh, I'm making double what I'm making at IBM. I was like, yeah, no questions asked. Sign me up. So ended up there. I was on the enterprise side. I think the journey for Rootly was very serendipitous. We as a company had a lot of incidents because we were scaling super quick. So keeping our systems reliable was quite hard. So we would have, Nora would know, she used to work at Instacart too. There would be all kinds of, you know, delivery issues or, making sure that we were rendering the right things on the website was hard. And so the products I was working on specifically was very 0 to 1 enterprise. And we depended on a lot of other services. And so when they went down, we went down as well. And so we started building Rootly as this internal tool for the company to really solve our own need. That's kind of where I met my co-founder, Quentin. He's my CTO. He lives in San Francisco. He's an awesome dude. He's a French guy, not really relevant, but he's a cool dude. Yeah, probably one of the smartest developers I've ever interacted with. And yeah, this is all pre-vibe coding. So we started building it on the weekends. Then slowly but surely, we kind of realized that I think we could probably build a company out of this. And as much as I loved Instacart, I was not interested in grocery delivery and figuring out why, I don't know, blueberries cost more online versus reconciled in the store and how do you fix that? Just didn't seem like the kind of problems I wanted to solve. But I met a lot of really smart people throughout it. And so the journey of Rootly kind of started. It was a very classical, we saw a need, we built for it. It wasn't we were particularly, we're so passionate, solve world hunger type situation. It was just this is way better than what we were currently doing. We just happen to be really good at it. So that was the motivation to quit and ultimately start the business. So
Yeah, amazing. And tell us a little bit about kind of that whole journey of validating your idea. I know there was a lot of competition in the beginning as well. How did you think about that? And how did you go about getting your first 10 customers?
yeah, there was a lot of competition then. There's even more competition now, which is great. And I think that's a good thing. You want to be in a market where there are customers that are that have budgets that you're competing against and are willing to buy and purchase. I think if I went back and did it all over again, I would not be trying to figure out a this like new use case for OpenClaw. It's like really cool. I'm super like excited about it because I got 30 Mac Minis at home and like, I don't know, go build a company out of it. It's like, who are you going to sell that to? It's like really, really hard. I would go back. I would figure out what my company was trying to either A, build internally, or B, figure out what can I create that I know I can sell. If you can't sell it, there's really no point to all of it. You're just having fun building like a hackathon. And that's the difference between a project and like a real company. And luckily, we found ourselves in a position. I didn't actually have this wisdom. I had no idea. We just got really lucky. We were in a position where, there's existing budget in our space. People are excited for new tooling and new innovation. People didn't enjoy the incumbents as well. Like we compete a lot against like pretty legacy companies like PagerDuty, for example. In fact, our office in Toronto overlooks their office in Toronto, which is pretty entertaining. And like I'll post about it later, but even in their office, they have like these fancy elevators that have like ads running in them. We own all the ad space in the elevator. So all of the ads are like hiring ads and they're like funny jabs at them, stuff like that. Yeah. In terms of acquiring our first few customers, I think what I realized quickly was, man, I really got to learn how to sell. I was mostly in a product role, which was nice. Like customers were kind of given to me and you would solve their problems. But learning how to sell was the most important thing. Like cold calling, cold emailing, sending LinkedIn DMs. I would make people like videos, like 30-second videos about why they should buy my product. Super cringe, but it works. You send them audio messages, you like text them on iMessage when you find out their number. And I would do that for, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every single day. And then the rest of my time, we would just try to support our existing customers. So if I wasn't doing that, there would be no momentum a week later for demos. And so I think a lot of it was just like sheer volume. You just had to do the sales part and we didn't have like, I don't know, we're not very cool. Like we didn't have like a bunch of inbound and hype and like we're some like OpenAI ex-employee and like everyone's flocking to it. It's like who the fuck is Rootly? You just kind of had to build a name for yourself. So a lot of cold emailing, I would say.
Yeah. And Rootly is a YC backed company. So is this before joining YC or what was kind of the journey towards getting into YC and afterwards?
Yeah, it was before YC. It was during YC. Actually, we were a pretty big failure in YC. The program is 3 months long. I think we maybe signed $8,000 in revenue. Yeah, it was. We were really trying to figure out like the right positioning for a product, and we were super ambitious. We were trying to build this entire incident management platform. It made a lot of sense. And that is what the product is today. We never pivoted, we never really changed, which is kind of cool. Customers, even larger enterprises, they would come to us and they would say, "Oh, it looks really cool. I feel like I don't need it right now. I feel like it's maybe for a more advanced company." And that was kind of odd. I was like, what? How's that possible? You have like billions of dollars. Like, how much bigger could it get? But we realized like quickly on, like the reason people weren't buying and they weren't taking demos and they weren't converting into trials was not because our product was bad, is because our messaging was bad. And so we started as this all-in-one incident management platform, which makes sense. And that is like kind of what we use today. But then we changed to say, hey, let's pare it back to just one feature. And we said, we're going to help you manage incidents in Slack. So instead of like 1 in 10 people doing demos with us, we had like 9 in 10 people doing demos with us, and majority would convert to a trial and majority would convert into sales. And the reason for that is people understood it. They understood the idea of managing incidents in Slack because they were already doing it today. And so it was digestible. It was an existing heuristic that they had. And it didn't seem like they were purchasing this heavyweight software. But in fact, the product never changed. It was identical. We didn't make a single change. And we would just progressively disclose more advanced features as the customer went on. So that was probably the biggest change. Like without that singular messaging change, I do not think this company would have existed. That is the sole reason we are successful today.
Yeah, you folks were able to get like some serious brand names right away. I know we were talking before and you mentioned how you guys secured Canva when you're only 2 people as a company. Tell us a little bit more about that journey. And you have Canva, Figma, NVIDIA, Cisco, all sorts of other big brand names. What was kind of the the process to landing those deals?
Yeah, Canva was interesting. We were only 2 people. This was like 3, 4 years ago now, which is like and if you don't know, Canva is headquartered in Sydney, Australia. So it automatically meant Sundays were a work day no matter what, because they would be awake. It's their Monday. We got in touch because we got in touch through an introduction. We knew some of the team, a team of a team previously, and they knew like there was more incumbent solutions. And we built a what's even harder about our product is you're right on like the critical reliability path. Like when all systems go down, when AWS goes down, you have to be the tool that remains reliable in order to page them awake. And so we knew from a sheer credibility standpoint, we probably weren't going to win. But we also knew that Canva had very specific needs that, although it's a big company for us to maybe some of our competition, you were just another company. And because of that, we built custom feature after custom feature to make sure the product worked incredibly well for that particular use case. We built probably to date, like, no joke, like 150 features. And all of it was worth it. Canva's still a customer. They pay us a ton of money. Um, yeah. So we won them through demonstrating that we could win on support. And because they were in a completely different time zone, my co founder's in San Francisco. And so there would be this 6-hour window where neither of us would be awake, even on a long night, to support them. And if we're trying to win them through support and win them through customer service, we had to be there. So we would alternate setting alarms every 2 hours through the night, and we would wake up, answer Slack messages that they would come in through support, and then we'd go back to bed. I guess maybe I don't have a kid, but that's how I imagine having a kid would be, except you're like nursing a billion-dollar company to a certain extent. And that worked really well. And the other thing that was helpful was we didn't rely on just email support or like texting support. Like we had a dedicated Slack channel with them. They could ask us a billion questions that they wanted to. There was no time we would respond under 30 minutes, no matter what time of day. Like even on Christmas Day, it didn't matter. And so we got a lot of real time feedback on what wasn't working. And they found a ton of bugs. Like Canva QA'd the living hell out of our tool. They had like thousands of engineers and users on it. And we turned around and we fixed all of them within like an hour of reporting. And they were very impressed. And that turned into momentum for the next customer who was like, who else do you work with? And we're like, oh, we work with Canva, and Canva would do the reference. And you'd have 2 customers, and 2 becomes 4, and like kind of compounds, thousands of engineers at Canva. One is bound to leave for another company that's like, fuck, we need a better incident management tool. And that's how you kind of grow.
Yeah, totally. It's really helpful to get that big brand name early on. And I'm also pretty familiar with that time zone. I did 2 years from Toronto working for Canva, so 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. But yeah, that's incredible. Like, so you kind of got that big customer right away in the beginning, and then were able to build your whole feature set around the needs of that big brand name and get those additional the users and brand names early. Curious how you approach pricing. How did you think about pricing early? It's also especially more tricky with the enterprise pricing. How did you approach it?
Yeah, it was definitely kind of work backwards on how much money we thought we could get out of someone. So we never posted our pricing until honestly 2 years ago, because some customers we knew were going to be pretty price sensitive and others we knew had incredibly deep pockets. And so we didn't want to leave money on the table, and we didn't want to negotiate ourselves out of a deal. And we certainly left money on the table at the end of the day. Like you don't disclose your pricing. We sell to developers. They don't see that. They're like, fuck, I'm not taking a sales call. Like I hate that. And so there was a bunch that we missed out on for sure, but it was very, everything was custom. We determined like the number of users they had, the usage that they would, we thought they would incur. And so we kind of went from there, and we never had a pricing structure in place. I think as time moved on a bit, we started thinking about there should be a minimum now. We have to protect the floor of our deals. We don't want to provide this level of support and customization if you're only paying us like 5K, 10K, 20K. And so we started doing that, especially as we gain more authority and credibility in the space. But yeah, I would say if you're super early on and you're losing deals to pricing, that's pretty crazy because the most important thing is getting customers that are going to be raving fans and advocates for you. That it's who your other big customers are going to do diligence. That's who your investors are going to do diligence. These investors aren't the most brilliant in the world. They're just going to ask these companies. All of our investors have a way to ask the CTO at Canva whether or not they like Rootly. And if he hates it, um, I don't know, we're kind of screwed, right? So that's the most important thing, and that turns into momentum because there will be a enterprise deal that comes along, and it's just gonna make everything else look like a drop in the bucket. And the same is still true for us. We've done, this year, like, singular deals that made us more money than the first 3 years combined. And had we been this, I don't know, nickel and diming and, like, had this ego around pricing, that would have been a problem. That would have been a huge problem. And as you guys know, like, the margins on SaaS are insane. So it's not like I've ever lost money either.
Totally. So you mentioned early on, there's a lot of founder-led sales, outbound cold calls. How did you kind of scale that acquisition later on to kind of the different channels? Like, I'm sure you invested a lot more into like kind of the buy channels, partner channels, and then still a lot of investment in the sales side of things. So curious how you scaled yourself on the sales side.
I think there's also a lot of things that didn't change. And I still, there's not a given week where I'm not maxed out on my, LinkedIn connections and messaging people to take a look at our product or go in for an interview. That's never changed. We have a leaderboard at work where we rank like most number of qualified outbound leads. And I feel really disgusting if I'm not in that like top 2 slot. So I make sure I'm in there all the time. And in fact, even last year we run like loads of spiffs and competitions against me. Like that should never change as a founder. You will never get out of selling, and you should make sure that is in the DNA of your company. But everything I was doing 4 years ago, I am still doing today when it comes to outbound. Yeah, I'll probably be up late tonight prospecting. I'll probably ask all of you to buy our product right after this. Is why Anastasia's here to make sure you don't leave without, buying. So yeah, you kind of got to be ruthless about it. Then other things more organically that we found, like like growth channels that suck, or like Reddit ads. Like, what? Like, who the fuck buys from that? I don't. Then things that work really well is like we just like write a lot of like founder based content on Reddit that I mostly draft myself, and it starts interesting conversations that people like. And that's like, that outperforms like Google ads sometimes. And we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on Google ads. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, give some like tips, for some of the first time founders on sales, right? Like what are some of the things that you've learned that are working now versus, before? What are some kind of hacks that you found to be effective when trying to close some of these bigger deals?
I would say go in person. Like, it was really hard for us because we started peak COVID. Like, this is like pre-second vaccine coming out, This is like right in the heat of it. So no one was trying to hang out. I didn't even see my co-founder for like 1.5 years. But once we started getting, once we were coming out of it a bit more and things were going back to normal, we were very gung-ho about getting on the plane, visiting our customers, and we would talk about anything. We would talk about work, we talk about their kids, we would hang out and be their friends. Like, I've been to their weddings, like they bought me wedding gifts. They're a big part of our lives now. And yeah, going in person is probably the greatest hack even today. We're constantly on the plane and traveling around to meet them. Then yeah, the other thing that I think LinkedIn is so underrated and powerful. We get a bunch of leads just every post that I make, making sure that you're top of mind for your customers. They might not buy today, they might not buy a year from now, but they'll remember you. Like, we just had someone reach out. I won't say the company, but was probably the fourth company I've ever did a demo with, reached out to us yesterday and said, we're ready. So, and we just remain relevant in their minds for a very long time.
Wow, amazing. So you mentioned, as soon as you get those bigger customers, kind of have a bit of a land and expand approach. You'll have like initial users coming in and engineers kind of expand from there. You folks have been Slack native from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about some of those partner channels that have been effective for you folks.
Yeah, I think another maybe way of thinking about it is when you're a new company, you have no brand, you have no credibility, you have very few customers. And the way to grow also is how can other people amplify, how can you leverage other people's audiences? And so we started working super closely with Slack, and we still do, and like other companies, and they would talk about us. And you just naturally build credibility, and their customers start learning about you, and they end up becoming your customers, and they make intros. And when they're like, hey, I'm maybe not sure about Rootly, they also back you up as well. So, and a lot of it was other startups that we worked with too, because, like off the bat, Slack wasn't super down. And now, like, we're probably like one of the most popular apps in their app store. And so, there's like a full person dedicated to it. So,
Amazing. So that's been a pretty effective channel in terms of just being part of their ecosystem, getting those new customers. Any other like partnerships that you folks have found to be really effective?
I mean, our business is, when you get really far along, AWS becomes a really good channel. Sometimes, AWS will come to us because they have a very robust marketplace. And a lot of enterprises, they have a specific allocated spend on marketplace that they have to use. And if they don't, their budget shrinks and their discounts get lower. So they're incentivized to spend money. Sometimes we'll have AWS reps that already sold the entire deal. We had no idea what was involved. It's a Fortune 500 company, and they say it's ready for signature. And so AWS becomes productive. The more revenue you do with them, the more incentivized their sellers are going to want to close marketplace deals with your product. So things like that work really well. But I mean, I think the TLDR is like nothing beats cold outreach, no matter what. Like even today, like it's the best use of my time still.
Yeah, totally. And then when was your first sales hire?
Sales hire, it's debated. I had two AEs kind of start in around the same time. One signed before, then one start date was before. Like, how do you measure who's first? I don't know. They're all like in a tough tussle about that. Um, my one of my first AEs is also my VP of sales now, which is really cool. He's been with me for the last 4+ years, which is incredible. And he had nothing going for him, to be honest. And he knows this. He used to sell, government products at AWS. He spent 6 years prior to that at Salesforce, and he's going to come and sell, this brand new SaaS based solution at a startup that has two people or three people. And I don't know, I just saw something in him, and maybe no one else did. And he just had the right energy. I really liked him. I was desperate too. So yeah, that was it. That was history. I got very lucky. And I think, the thing that convinced him to join too was he saw there was a founder that knows how to sell. Like he wasn't here just to figure it out all by himself and all on his own. Like he knew that this product is sellable. We were closing big enterprise customers even without the help of a formal sales person.
Yeah, for sure. I got a chance to visit your office a couple of weeks ago. I met some of your team members, like an incredible team. I'm curious, like, what are some of the mistakes you made in hiring and some lessons learned, finding right people over the years?
Yeah, we made a lot of mistakes. I think the first mistake that we made was we tried to be the company that we weren't. We try to have all these like benefits and like cool workplace things and like budget for your home office and like I don't know, just like attracted the wrong people. Like we wanted people that are very first principle, like they're very ownership driven and they can come here, make a lot of money, and we can reward them. And the people that we were attracting, I won't call any companies out specifically, were just kind of like, late stage startup coasters. They're working maybe max 30 hours a week. And like, you were like, that's the talent we want to attract. So let's design everything around that. And we had all these like fancy perks. And yeah, we stripped all of them away. There's no cool benefits at Rootly other than your job, your coworkers, and your pay. That's it. We do free lunch and dinner, no breakfast. That you're on your own. We don't.
Yeah, and so Ridley's been around for like almost 5 years now. Like, what are some of the things that you could unlearn as a founder?
That's a good one. Unlearn as a founder. I think it's building your leadership team quickly is something that I wish I did faster and earlier. Having a great leader takes a lot of time to groom and to trust and to own functions, very specifically. They have to have a very specific style that works well for you. They are ultimately as big of a culture carrier in your business as you are. And I simply cannot be there all the time. And we learned that the type of leaders that we really want are great operators. We never want to hire a leader that we do not think they can actually do the job of the IC that rolls into them. In our company, they just won't gain any respect. And we've done that before. We've made that mistake time and time again. That's something, well, I guess that's the part that we learned, but also the part that we unlearn.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's like kind of that middle management is always the hardest part. Even as I've been part of different startups, that's when things break and that's when issues come up. But yeah, that's always kind of the hard part. I'm curious, what metrics do you obsess over now, like versus before?
Dollars spent on lunch, try to keep that as low as possible. We obsess over that. Rent. No, but in all seriousness, like top all the key ones, like top line revenue. Our net dollar retention is really important to us. We're super proud of it. Like we're in the 90th plus percentile for it. We want to know acquiring customers is one thing, but continuing to grow them and making sure they love and expand and growing their usage and continues to meet their needs. That's what investors care a lot about. That's what we care a lot about. We cannot afford to have any sort of leaky bucket situation. So we obsessed over our net dollar retention probably the most.
Yeah, I think like Rootly is a pretty interesting business, right? I'm assuming like on the retention side, it's much better than a lot of other SaaS companies because people have their incidents all in there. It's probably harder to migrate off of. How do you approach retention?
Yeah, we're the best. There's no one better than us. Here's the thing. I think there's a tendency for even like really early on. I remember having this conversation with my French co-founder, and he, we were like, we came from Instacart, and it was super metrics driven. Every decision we made was around data and like usage based, and we started setting up a lot of the same analytic rails for our customers. We had tens, then hundreds, and so on and so forth. Customers, and like, why wouldn't I want to monitor login and usage and dips and like product adoption and all of that? And what ended up happening, we didn't let it go on for too long, but we just started minimizing our customers, not in a negative way, but we took all the complexity and the uniqueness of a company like Canva, and we said, you're now the singular health metric, which felt really weird. How could you possibly capture something as unique and personal as the health of your incident management program into a singular number or a set of metrics? The only way to really make your customers happy is by talking to them. So we banned dashboards. We had no analytics on our customers other than how much they were paying us and if they paid their invoice. That was it. We didn't know if they logged in. We didn't know if they had a sudden dip in usage. We didn't know any of that. We wouldn't monitor it because all we did was we got on the call with them. And we still do that today. We scale our CSMs, or customer success org, in a very unscalable way. All of them have recurring calls with every single customer, and we're just there to hear them out and to learn. We have a gazillion dashboards now. We have all kinds of like custom agent tools, yada yada. But nothing beats just talking to your customers and really learning what they want. And we've flagged so much risk early on. We figured out way more expansion potential early on. Like, hey, maybe we're working with this company, but they're gearing up to buy two other companies. How should the product work? And so we got ahead of it, right? And it made our product more valuable because the companies they were buying were using the competitors, and we knew it'd be another competition for no reason. So stuff like that. Banning dashboards was a good idea.
Yeah, totally. It's so you folks are a reliability company. Obviously, it means for you folks to be up all the time. How do you define world class reliability internally?
I think for us, it's very challenging because on one hand, you need to be this startup that is scaling incredibly quick. You have to be innovative. The feature sets you're delivering have to outpace everything the incumbent has done over the last 20 years, and you're delivering something better. And when the whole world is not working, from like maybe one of the cloud providers goes down, you have to be robust. I think it's forced us to do pretty unnatural things that maybe you guys won't run into as much, but we had to spend a lot of money early on to build up our infrastructure. And the thing that we think about all the time on engineering is, I know it seems weird, especially when all these agents are so cool, but we're in the business of doing the boring things right. Everything we do is designed to be boring as hell. Like when we build, our on-call tool, we only think about reliability and resilience. We don't care what features come up on top, that comes after. We build AI features, we only care about privacy and governance and how their data is used because we know that's what our customers care about. That's the boring stuff. So I think the big thing for us is just to be incredibly boring and not lose sight of it. It only takes a few hiccups before your customers will never trust you again.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've definitely seen that firsthand. Canva's been down a bunch of times, and all sorts of issues come up from that. Just the amount of money we lose, right? As like, and a lot of companies lose. What would you say is like, what over the years companies underestimate about uptime?
I I think people often don't think of reliability as this feature necessarily. They view it as this like afterthought. It's usually more salient in a company's mind when things do break and they go wrong. Like, hey, there's a Cloudflare outage. Oh my gosh, we need like a dead man switch on our like our CDN and like all that stuff. Then like a month goes by, it's like, nah, who cares? Like we're not feeling the pain anymore. What are the odds of it breaking again? And I think people have came to understand that incidents are pretty inevitable. They will happen, and they're typically these black swan events that you may not have run into. And I think the best companies, and Canva is a good example of this. They always viewed every incident as like a unplanned investment opportunity, and so they were able to turn into kind of the advantages for their engineering team. So they every time they were more and more robust as opposed to this like chore that some other companies view it as. So the sooner companies have that, the better position that they are. And like big and small companies run into the same maturity problems.
Yeah, great. So I'll ask a few rapid fire questions, and then we'll hand it over to the audience to ask questions as well. So first customer, how did you get them?
Cold email. Yes.
Nice. Hardest moment in year one.
Definitely the waking up in like every 2 hours was pretty nuts. That and well, I just got a puppy at the time, so it was like really busy. She's awesome, right? Pretty awesome. That was probably the hardest thing, I would say. Then also like building the right early team was hard.
And one metric you obsess over.
Oh yeah, I think we touched on it
Yeah.
a bit briefly, or certainly our net dollar retention. I care about a ton. We're the kind of company that also maybe it's a spicy take, but we care a lot about our customer NPS more than our employee NPS. Both can't be true at the same time sometimes.
Yeah, interesting. What's the most overrated growth channel?
Definitely just shit posting on Reddit is pretty good.
Yeah. And what's the most underrated?
Sorry, that would be
No.
the underrated
Yeah.
one. Overrated one would be the Reddit
The
ads.
Reddit.
Yeah, yeah. And then you're just like all like, oh, who's this like company? It's like they're trying to be funny because this Reddit but comes across as like cringe and sterile. Ugh, I don't know. I hate that. It's like a corporate meme. Yuck.
Yeah. One sentence advice for profound.
That's a good one. I don't know if I have a lot of good advice, but I would say that isn't cliche. I think it is the best job in the world. It is the most I've ever worked in my whole life, but I will never do anything else than build companies. It is the best. That's not really advice. It's just more like encouragement.
Go build companies.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does winning look like for Rootly in 5 years?
We certainly want to be the default way people think about in terms of how to be reliable, whether that's through incident management or everything up the tool chain. We want to own all of that. We want to be the solution. And I think what's really cool for us is, there's not a product that we use in our given day or not a product that any of you use in a given day that isn't a customer of ours. And so we are obsessed with continuing to, power the whole world in terms of reliability.
Yeah. And what's last one? What's something people must misunderstood about you as a founder?
Well, I didn't think anyone thought I would actually get a tattoo of my company, but I just got one. There you go.
All right. Well, this has been incredible. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
JJ.
Thank you so much for the great talk. My name is Dev. I used to do growth and some marketing and sales at Amazon Prime back when it like just launched in Canada. So I definitely relate to some of your struggles. One thing I've heard from founders that transition from the early stage into the growth stage, they always talk about how their relationship with money, either their own personally or their company's money, changed so immensely the moment they raise their like A or B round. So my question to you is, how has your relationship with money in the context of your company, I'll just say, or whatever you're comfortable sharing with, how has that changed as your company has grown to the state it is in right now?
I love that question. I mean, I would never not fly private. I'm just kidding. I don't think it's changed too much. I think we think of it as leverage still. I think we're incredibly generous in terms of how we think about compensation now. We see it as like a tool to continue, which sounds like the most obvious thing, but like retaining your early employees at the times when you barely could pay them anything. And so that's a very special moment for us. And I think the things that make me the most proud of this company is like not any specific customer, but every time I've been able to call an employee that's been with me for a while and you get to promote them and they tell you this is the most money they've ever made in their whole career, that you're setting up for success and they're putting their kids through school. That is the most gratifying thing that you can do with money. Otherwise, I mean, I think you can ask my whole team. I'm pretty cheap. So yeah.
Hi. Thanks so much for the talk. One thing that really, I guess, stood out for me is I'm in product management. And in product, especially in early stage, one of the kind of weirdest conundrums you can face is the delivery channel of your product, right? And you guys chose Slack as that core delivery channel. What was, I guess, signal that you guys were able to identify that, okay, yes, indeed, like Slack should be the main kind of like delivery channel for this product, and for other products that are probably not in your use case, it could be any other type of product, maybe a developer tool or whatever it is, right? What advice would you give for a builder or a founder or whatever it is, right, to identify the main channel or delivery channel that their users will indeed want to be utilized for that product?
Yeah, I think for us, like there wasn't a way to make this product successful without Slack. That's why we work so closely with them and their whole leadership and their C-suite team. This product really only could exist with them. It's almost like the equivalent of trying to build a mobile app, except the app store doesn't exist. You're kind of like, what do you do next in that sense? Or our hand was a little bit forced in that sense. And it just so happens to be a very productive channel for us that we continued investing in because they had a very wide horizontal grasp on the market. Even still, like our work that we do on Slack far surpasses the work that we do on Teams, let's say. But it also made we were able to meet people where they worked. So it wasn't like another tool. Like sometimes you like download something on your phone and like just never click into it. But, if it's like embedded into another app, it's way more accessible. So all kind of, I think it kind of depends on what you're building probably. But I would say if yours works in Slack, I would definitely do it. They're fantastic to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you, JJ. Couple questions. Going back to those early days, you mentioned like you were not doing sales. Like, are there some tools, resources, or like books, frameworks, podcasts that helped you in those early days in terms of polishing your messages and how you were doing your cold emailing or cold outreach?
I don't think I listened to a single podcast, read a single book, read a single blog post about how to do it. You just kind of, it's like, oh man, I don't have that much savings. I gotta like grind and like have these conversations. I think like a year in, I hired a sales coach for, a week. And I was like, no, didn't love that. I'd much rather just, if I can't sell it, no one can sell it. So it was more of a survival thing than anything. And now, even today, I'm pretty stubborn. I don't really read much advice. I don't know if I'd be, joining one of these and like figuring out how to do it. I'm just very stubborn in that sense. And luckily it's worked out well. We're in a market that has demand for a product like this.
And I had another question on the tactical level. Like, how did you go about developing those partnerships? Whether it was like with Slack or with other like partners that you had in early days?
Yeah, I think showing value to them. Maybe that was through, I remember with Slack, like we actually brought them a few household names that were interested in doing this 3-way case study. And that made them quite interested in continuing to invest deeper in us. Then honestly, I just met a bunch of them, became friends, and I just asked. And that's probably been the most underrated thing in sales. Like you come to your quarter end, you're like really trying to hit this revenue goal. And this deal is like $1 million and it's like hinging. Maybe it's like on January 31st, maybe it's like February 1st. And you know what most sellers don't do? They just don't ask. We just call our buyer and said, dude, we're trying to hit a huge goal. It mean a lot to me if you could sign this today. Could you do that? 10 times out of 10, they will say yes. They will go to bat for you. It's not awkward. I know it feels awkward, but you got to just ask them. In deal cycles too, sometimes you feel like you're wasting a bunch of time. You don't know if you're winning or not. We just ask them. We say, hey, I feel like we're behind. Is that true or not? And they'll say, yes, you are behind for these reasons. And we address this reason. Now we're ahead. Then we get to the procurement stage and we'll say, hey, do we have the tech win? Are we the vendor of choice that you're going to go to bat for? We are. That's great. But we leave nothing up to ambiguity. And I think that's maybe one thing I've learned early on. Like, it's just like, you're kind of like dancing around the hard, awkward question, right? And you're just like way better off asking them.
So when you're doing the sales strategy, the 12 hours a day reaching out to people, do you have any strategy or target when you're going into it? Or do you just scroll on LinkedIn, find someone, message them? And then I guess, how do you keep track of all of that? Is it just in your head?
Unfortunately, a bunch of it is in my head or just like tabs where, there's so many tabs open and my computer's so slow, but I don't want to close them because I'm too lazy to put them in like a CRM. So I know I have to do the cold outreach in order to make my computer run fast enough for my next meeting and the next morning, which is like probably the worst advice, but that is kind of how I do it, to be honest.
And then what about your team? Do you have them do the same strategy, just reaching out to people on LinkedIn?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I will we have like outbound parties. We go pretty ballistic on it, I would say. Think of it this way: like even if they say no, but they respond, at least they know who you are, right? Maybe it's not time for them right now, or their next company, or their next company. Maybe they start a company and it grows to 1,000 people, and then they buy you. That's totally okay too. But you're playing a numbers game ultimately. And so we certainly look at, our buyer profiles, our ICP, what we think is correct. We often will reach out. Like I will spend time mostly reaching out to other founders and CEOs at different companies because you just have a lot more to relate to. But we will ask anyone. It could be a partnerships person that you meet and they could just DM your person on Slack for you and they will almost certainly take your call. So it doesn't have to be the direct ICP you're cold reaching out to and doing this hard sell.
Hi, JJ. Thanks for the talk. I think you have a very interesting style in the way you speak, and it kind of translates to what you were saying about your company. There's like a directness to it. I think it's really cool. And my question to you was when you spoke about like your success team, for instance, you said you don't show them dashboards of like logins and things like that, somewhat still now. I see AI in the name, or at least next to your logo. I'm really curious about how you balance those two things. So your customer success managers are speaking to your customers as a primary source of information, from what I understand. Yet you are a tech company, you're in SaaS. There's pressure to use AI to automate a lot of the human components, especially in success. So yeah, curious of how you think about that and then how you make the business case for it also.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. We try to use as much AI as possible. We want to scale very intelligently like any other company. We certainly never remove the human component. People ultimately buy from people, and people buy off of relationships all the time. So that's super important to us. It's a lot different now. We have like unlimited dashboards. We have like a whole bunch of custom agents that we built as well to analyze, customer health like, from the moment you fundraise to, I don't know, CEO is at a Coldplay concert. Like we know that. Like it gives us, signals all the time. We're like, hey, you're about to acquire a company, and they were previously on a competitor, and they're bringing in 700 users. Now we're gonna, strike when the iron's hot. We were writing the vast majority of our code, at least 60-70%, through strictly Claude Code. Now we built our own AI code reviewing, code reviewer tool. We have our own like fine-tuned reliability models for some of our AI products. We go pretty ham on it nowadays.
For when you said you scale your success team in an unscalable way, I think, or something like that. Curious what you meant by that.
Mostly just a ton of recurring conversations. We do a lot of human to human training, whether it's understanding our tool. Our tool is very easy to use when you guys all sign a contract later tonight. But we also, we think a lot about like, what are the things around our software a team needs to be successful? Sometimes maybe they're not as mature in like their incident management practices. We can certainly help advise on that. And so, we have a team of what we call reliability advocates that their whole job is to basically be almost like an external, obviously bias, but consultant to these businesses. And we spend a lot of money on that every year. And it may not drive any expansion, but we know it'll ultimately help the adoption of our tool.
So they don't just evangelize on Rootly, like they'll speak to reliability overall.
Yeah, like a good example of that is, in some countries you have to pay for people that are on call. Setting up that framework, like we have some tools to help you, but setting up the legal program around that to make sure everything is tracked properly can be quite difficult. And so we'll advise on that. Or, we'll advise a company on like, hey, how do I fix this issue where my leadership team keeps joining these incidents? They're super distracting. And we'll like have a conversation with them, or we'll put on a session where, we did one. It was called Incidents Are Not a Spectator Sport. And that was a very a roundabout way to convince them that, hey, you're actually creating more harm without saying executives here are not useful in these cases. And that has nothing to do with their tool necessarily. It's strictly the culture, the people, the process.
Really enjoyed hearing about your growth stories. This is more like an offshoot of both their questions. I'm just curious how, from vibe wise, based on your experience of code outreach, how folks' expectations about code outbound has changed, because like my spidey senses tell me that it's a lot easier to do code outreach and personalize it, but also the cringe factor can be very real, because you can tell when someone's like, you clearly just deep researched what my product is and just plugged and play. I'm curious, like sort of like what your read is on that when it comes to people's expectations.
Yeah, we try not to be cringe. I mean, even on that, we built our own version of 11x or these AI SDRs. There's a whole case study about us on Clay's blog post, also a customer. And it's actually pretty incredible the amount of research you can do. I think it's helped accelerate a lot of it. But we still tend to add the human touch to it. We don't try to be like, oh my gosh, congratulations on this incredible new journey. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like such a egg. We're a lot more direct. I think, I think the components we put in is we make the ask very clear upfront. We give them the right social proof that they would care about. We go work with a bank, like we're telling them like, hey, we work with like Simple and SoFi Bank and American Express and like, all these other companies. Or we go work with a restaurant, like we work with Tim Hortons and Chick-fil-A and all of them. So we try to make it as relevant as possible. But I think people are pretty receptive. And you also want to do things where it's not like, hey, come buy my product. It's like, dude, I'm putting on like the sickest reliability leaders dinner. Like it's going to be 10 people, VP only, going to this Michelin star restaurant. Do you want to come? And they're like, yeah, I'm down. And it's way easier.
Thank you for sharing, JJ. I'm actually very interested. You talk about like when you guys first get a big client, Canvas in Australia, it's only you and your co-founder, and you guys have also built a lot of bespoke features for them. And I'm curious, just two of you building a lot of like bespoke feature for big client. How fast could you guys like deliver those new feature, or is speed important to deliver all these like custom feature they're looking for?
People are impressed by speed. I would say like we want to beat prime delivery, basically. Yes,
Right.
same day, the next day, max. Yeah, we would work through the night. It didn't matter any day of the week.
I would prefer if you talk a little bit about like the mapping the purchase behavior of your customers early, especially in like something that reliability. People are buying something they might see in a demo, but they did not actually try out. So how did you map the purchase behavior from like the conversation, the outreach to the demo to like a proof of concept to the actual purchase? What are the tips and tricks that you can share with us on the SaaS side?
Oh my gosh, that was such a smart question. I think for us, understanding the progressive disclosure through the way that we sold was really important. We always thought of it, and this is still what we do a sales training thing every month for new hires that I run. You can always pair once you reveal complexity, you can never walk it back, but you can always add it on, I would say. And so in our demos, what we do, we always try to show the demo in the first call, which is like not traditional sales advice. Most people are like, oh, you just want to ask a bunch of questions. But like, you guys have all bought tools before. Maybe some of you are engineers. It's like, dude, just show me the tool. I don't want to talk to a BDR. I'm like, let's just get to the point. And so we use the demo as the opportunity to figure out all the things that they care about. If we show them the metrics product, we're trying to understand really deeply how are they solving it today? What are the struggles there? Is that actually a pain point? Do their leaders care about it? Do they need a report on it? Things like that. And so often I think for our product though, it's pretty rare for them not to do a pretty extensive trial before buying. I wish it wasn't the case. Like, probably for some of these AI products, you can get away with it. But I think for us, because it was so workflow driven, it's so embedded in their process. It's also such a high stakes product. They had to see it to believe it. The other thing I would say probably more important though was what we got wrong early on was we only focused on the directors and VPs because they were the ones ultimately signing the contracts. And what we failed to realize was most of these decisions were done by a committee of ICs. They could have been there for 2 years. They could have been there for 10 years, but they would come together and collectively advise their director or their VP on if they should purchase the tool. And all I did was take this damn director golfing. And what he or she would tell me at the end was, my team will decide. And we did that so many times before we realized that we need to win the hearts and minds of the individuals, because it's so rare for a leader to go back against the decision of their collective team for a vendor they just met. So I don't know if that helped answer any of it, but that question was too
Good.
smart for my
But I can
capability.
imagine how hard it is to sell like a reliability product.
All right, let's final one.
I'm so lucky to get the final question. Okay, yeah. So JJ, I want to hear more about the fundraising journey. Like, why do your investors, or which parts of Rootly AI that your investor fund is much better than your competitors? Like,
Nothing about your traction is going to be impressive unless you're some company like Mercor or, Anthropic or something crazy like that. They're really just betting on you as a founder and as your team and your ability to probably win in this space. So you got to get them excited about the space. It can't be a small category. You have to prove and demonstrate like you as a founder have the right ingredients and you have some unique insight into into what you're building, especially if it's a existing space already. Like most things to me are, existing, but that was probably it. And we were very picky on the investors that we wanted. They're the ones that I send like stupid memes to, right? And like they're super close friends of mine. And like, we have a board meeting on Monday, and like, we're gonna have a very candid conversation about, some of the future of the business. So all you're optimizing for is high trust individuals. And all they're optimizing for is like super ambitious, uniquely talented founders. And whether your idea works off the bat, they're most likely going to change. That's not what they're betting on.
okay, did you also get all these investors by cold emails?
Yeah, a lot of them actually. But I think what also happens is one investor will make intros to other investors, and that will kind of like just grow your network. Yeah. Even if they don't, like some of my most helpful people in our network are people that we didn't take money from. We text them all the time. They help us in deals. They help us as if they were on our cap table.
JJ, we want to thank you for answering all these questions and sharing some great tactics with the growth community. Where can people find out more about you and connect with you?
Just the demo website on rootly.com.
All right. Make sure everyone signs up for a demo on the rootly.com website. And yeah, we want to thank everyone for joining. Let's give it a round of applause to JJ for sharing some great insights.